the Wheel of Fortune episode where it was people that annoy you, and they had this subgroup of people of the dad went completely off and picked the wrong word and was just labeled a racist for the rest of his life.
Oh yeah.
I know exactly the episode you're talking about because the right word was naggers.
We all got an opinion, but can you back yours up? Where you get your sources from? Hope that don't got you stuck. We gon' check you and your understanding of knowledge. That's regardless if you finished school or went to college. Not everything is as black and white as it seems. This show here is about expressing what you mean. Whether you get canceled or whether you get played. Welcome to the Cancelled Podcast with Elliott and Jay.
So we'll just pick up where we left off, Phil. Sorry about that.
Can you kind of like give me a warm handoff? What did you last hear?
The last thing I heard was it had an uproar. I think after that it just dropped like immediately.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like, yeah. When it came out, I forgot exactly what year, but I was, like I said, I was 10, 5th grade. I was wearing a Dead Kenny shirt. He was like lying on the side. Rats were eating his eyes out, and teachers were giving me crap for it. But I was just like, I don't care. Like this, I just knew from the show itself and from just the reaction of other people that this show was upping the ante of The Simpsons, and I was already primed for it because I was such a big fan of The Simpsons as a kid. You know, even though I didn't understand the social and political commentary, I knew they were making digs at what was going on in the world around me. And I guess you could say it like South Park was like the baton pass to like really like make no side safe for the funny stuff that goes on in politics and things that we point out in human behavior. So, and I was never like a diehard fan where I would watch every episode, but every time I would catch it or a friend would talk to me about it, it was always hilarious. I collected a few episodes in mind that we can bring up later, but looking back on these episodes and thinking of not about the episode itself, but what it represented in that time frame. Especially the movie. Oh man, the movie was great. Personally, it helped me and my dad connect better because he loved the political commentary, and I just loved the fart and all the dirty jokes that they would have all the time. And then
those age groups, yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't until this year I actually realized the name of the movie is actually a penis joke. Did you know that? Yeah. I just found that out recently. I was sitting there thinking of it. Yeah, I was sitting there thinking about it, and I was like, bigger, longer, and uncut. And I was like, there's no way. And then, yeah, Google confirmed it all for me. Okay. So what about you, Michael?
With me, I'm Michael. I can kind of tell my early thoughts on it of I grew up watching it, but it wasn't like I seeked it out. It was while I was in school, my friends and people would make references, and I'm like, what is this? And it just kind of felt like a dirty secret where I felt like I had to, like, my bedtime was at 9 and I had to stay up to watch like the South Park episode. And to kind of get these references and just having just a cartoon that was different from others back in the day, and having a younger version of me as like a child version of me comprehending of what does that mean other than the fart jokes and the funny Kenny getting killed. But it's interesting. I love just the sociology aspect. That's my background and early childhood development of like, how has culture evolved? How has it changed? How has South Park pushed the envelope, and how has current generations be desensitized to it too, where it's not offensive anymore because we're so used to it that we look at current cartoons for kids, and how had that changed from the 90s to now. And it's interesting where I currently work at a behavioral home, but also as a kindergarten teacher, it's interesting to see how generations have changed of how we consume media, but also the type of media of what is being talked about, what is being shown to our children, and how South Park kind of changed a lot of that, and how that humor is kind of formed to a lot of popular shows where it was meant for adults, and now like kids have grasped it, and now we have shows like BoJack Horseman or Rick and Morty or Family Guy, where all levels of people are watching and they still have the commentary, but it definitely has a target audience.
Yeah. Some would actually say like South Park was kind of like the birth of like adult animation, especially like within the States too, that you brought up those examples. Because when you look at Rick and Morty, it has such a cult following now. And it kind of covers the same kind of aspects of South Park does, but in a less satirical way. Like they have their moments, but South Park really does put our flaws like right back into our face, like almost immediately now. So I do like that. And Elliott, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, somewhat similar stories, but I actually, when I was a kid, it was like too intense for me. So when it was coming out when I was like 10, I was like, that's for bad kids. Like they're saying curse words and stuff. So I didn't watch it for years, but it was still like a cultural phenomenon. And like I would even say a quote like, I'm not fat, I'm big boned. And then kids would laugh. And that was from Carmen. And it's just like weird, like everybody would laugh. But as I got older, when I was about 18, 19, I actually went back and I watched every episode. Like I would just go to sleep watching a South Park episode, and eventually got through all of them. But yeah, I think those guys, they're like geniuses. They are comedic geniuses. There's something to it that they figured out that's really funny.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I will say, with me, I enjoyed watching it from the first time I saw it, but it was definitely much more of like a hidden thing for me. Like my parents did not want me watching it at all, but I had older siblings, and so once it was on, they would just kind of knock on my door, wake me up. We would go downstairs with the giant fatback TVs. Since we're all like from the 90s, we know the fatback TVs, the heavy ones, and we just kind of gathered around, watch an episode or two, and then see what came on afterwards on Comedy Central. So it was a huge part of my childhood, and I've continuously followed it all the way into adulthood, all the way up until this point now. So I'm kind of glad to hear like we all had that some sort of shared instance and also unique instances with the show itself. So one thing relating towards the topic of how South Park kind of relates to modern day society, what were the episodes that stood out to you most, or one particular episode? And like, how do you feel like it has kind of influenced you or influenced society in a modern day?
Yeah, and I think I would like to go just like understanding when did South Park come out and what was our society like when it first came about, because it's definitely evolved and moved forward to be more social commentary. But South Park first came out in 1997, like the first premiered, and that was when like Bill Clinton was president, and that was during the time of the sex scandal. But you got to look like The Daily Show on Comedy Central was barely a year old, and so even looking at current events of like there was no Columbine, 9/11 hasn't happened yet. There was no Patriot Act. Gay marriage was just like being discussed, but it wasn't like, oh, this is for sure going to be a thing for the future. It was like, that's a pipe dream. And also even the TV shows, there wasn't Family Guy or Archer or Rick and Morty and BoJack Horseman. And even looking at presidentials that were very polarizing of Obama and President Trump, like that would happen so far after.
Yeah, I kind of like that too, because ultimately it traversed several different presidents, like presidential terms, but was also able to capture all the nuances of each one. Because like I know even with Bill Clinton, they would also bring back his antics, I would say, in the recent episodes where they actually had him do the Bill and Bill show. Did you see that, where it's like Bill Clinton and Bill Cosby up to their own adventures, quote unquote. And so even with Hillary, when she was running for president in 2016, they would bring Bill on, that's a tongue twister, and talk about how he wanted to be the first gentleman instead of the first lady. So I love how they always throw that back and kind of say like, this is where we started off at. And then here we are today with Mr. Garrison being Trump, and then Barack Obama was heisting I forgot where they had the heist, but they performed the giant bank robbery and everyone was in on it. Even McCain.
Yeah, Sarah Palin, everyone.
Yeah. And I think it's also interesting. It's transverse and it's evolved, but South Park has been going on for so long. But even like we look at social media consumption, we had to wait at a certain time period and catch it on their TV show to watch this episode and see these reruns. There was no Facebook or Instagram or social media platform where we could just see something controversial on our phones and be like, I need to watch this clip. It was all word of mouth. And I remember parents are in an uproar to try to cancel because every week was something notable of the first time seeing like a show that was meant for adult cartoons, but it looked like a regular cartoon for kids where you had main characters of kids going around their daily elementary lives, but the profanity, the cursing, let alone a character dying in a horrific way. And on top of that, it was just kids navigating, and I think that's what's been hold true, even though they've gotten more commentary. It's these kids from a small town in Colorado who haven't seen diversity, haven't experienced the evolving of the community around them, and they're just trying to navigate what is right and wrong in their own eyes. And sometimes you have in their South Park episodes that aha moment where Stan will be like, I learned a lot from this, or people just suck. But it's just these kids navigating these hard issues.
Which episodes do you prefer, actually? The ones that leave with the message at the end, or the ones that where they're just like, yeah, this is awful? Because I feel like they have opened those windows a lot more to kind of just say, like, they look back at society and just kind of shrug their shoulders.
I think the first one that I remember being, quote, controversial, where it was an uproar where everyone was talking about, it was an episode called It Hits the Fan. It was season 5 and it came out in like 2001. And that's when they were able to uncensor the word shit. And they said it, I believe, like 162 times in the one episode because they got the approval of like, can we say this curse word? And I knew they were like, you can't say the F word, but they're like, how about this lesser one? And they got approved and they just overdid it. And at the point on the bottom left, they had a counter that would go on for the whole episode each time they said it.
That was a great episode.
And then you got to think like, for me, how that's evolved, and we can all agree on it, is back then just hearing that word on national TV was out like crazy. We wouldn't hear that type of language. But now looking at FX and AMC, when we look at like Walking Dead or other like Breaking Bad, we're seeing things where it's like partial nudity or those words that have like, I think, paid pilgrimage where before there was no way we'd hear or see those type of things.
And it's crazy how it's like the show both is integrated with the moment, but also comments on the moment from the outside while being in it, because obviously these episodes affect so many mindsets too. Yeah, no, I'm really glad you brought that specific moment, because I remember being like hyped for it too and just rolling on the ground laughing when they were just trying to get as many shits in as they could.
It was still funny, every shit.
Yeah. And it's just like the significance that change for culture, just for basic cable standards. Be like, what is allowed? What isn't allowed?
Would you say
like
too,
now
like,
if we see that in a TV show or a cartoon, we're like, that's all they did? Cool.
Would you
that's nothing.
To like why we're so free with like our vocabulary now? Because there's a lot of shows like they're not up there with South Park, but it seems like we are more desensitized like to actual just curse words in general. Like we're just like, whatever. So do you think those kind of moments kind of contributed towards that?
I think they led the way, or they were definitely one of the vanguards in freedom of speech in that sense, in terms of like entertainment at least.
Mm-hmm.
And that they're still, even though they're not the only ones with the balls to make commentary on any side, they are still today, I think it's still one of the leading forms of entertainment that isn't afraid to rip apart any of the sides, whether someone thinks it's right or wrong. South Park will find the kink in their chains and call them out on it. And then, even despite certain parts of cancel culture, South Park is still up, and I'm sure if they had come out with the stuff they have now in 1997, they would have been shut down immediately. But like what I know now that we're bringing up all the South Park from across time, they definitely took their time in making sure that they they would up the ante every episode or season and see how, like they did with the curse word, like, can we say this now? All right, we said this, now let's see if we can say this. Like I think the first episode, I remember one of the interviews with the creator said, like, the first episode, the ante for that episode was that I think Stan's dog was gay. And back in 1997, oh my God, it's a gay dog, and that started the snowball of what South Park was able to do in desensitizing. And I think different crowds of South Park become desensitized to it, but at the same time, it also makes us more aware if we're really wanting to get to know how society and humans are behaving right now. South Park makes it easier to point at those things about ourselves and talk about it.
I agree with Phil. I think just we can go in more specific examples of episodes, but one for me is when we look at the episodes, it's just they make fun of everyone. So it's not like we can say there are a liberal winged like cartoon that only make fun of Democrats. Like they've like the first few episodes had Jesus on it, and then we had the Muhammad episode, and then even cancel culture of things of that nature. So there was no one safe that, but deep down they would use the absurd and the controversy. But a lot of times it was just to prove the point that are we too quick to just and to go to even like that cancel culture to judge and shut down, or is there a point of people are just terrible and we just need to stop believing in things, or just we need to find the facts? And so every time I watch some of these newer episodes, they might talk about things I disagree with, but it paints a bigger picture of some of these arguments is just like there shouldn't be this politicized, or how are we arguing about these things?
Yeah, I think part of what made the show go for so long is that they've often taken a nihilist position. Like they don't have a clear cut, we're on this side and you should believe this. It's really like making fun of both sides. Like, 2016 with Trump and Hillary Clinton, they were like, we have a giant douche or a turd sandwich. And I think that was just how a huge segment of the population felt. Like we have to choose between these two. But yeah, they attack from both sides and don't really leave anything firm at the end.
Oh yeah, like they really do. They always come from a neutral stance, but they're very offensive on both sides, and I love it. Like they're not afraid to attack anyone. Because because I do want to talk about how it relates to cancel culture at the end too. Because me and Elliott had this conversation in regards to their new platform, Integrity. So you got to have some integrity from Randy Marsh. And also the commentary on like the PC babies and PC principal and strong woman. So those are more modern characters that I do feel like they do play a specific role.
And they definitely parody.
They do take shots at.
I think South Park, especially in the beginning, was they would bring maybe like a celebrity or something like that, and they would be self-contained in their own world. And as it evolved, it like slowly became to the point where every episode is a social commentary in some way. They have the Integrity Farms they had the giant COVID extravaganza was one episode. They had when Trump was talking about building a wall, they had a Joker episode where it was like a Mexican Joker, how they were the evil ones to come through, and it like became a self-fulfilling prophecy from them. And one of the ones I loved that I thought was hilarious was when they were playing like this cops and robbers, and Butters got like ostracized and had to go to like Mexico and become like a coyote. And it was like a day without a Mexican kind of thing, but it was with Butters. And he had to learn this. He didn't realize the culture that he was immersed in, but he like had to go there and try to get back in. And like it was like extreme cops and robbers where like they would team up with the immigration officers to not let Butters back.
Yeah, it was. I was reading up on that one last night. Actually, I was like doing my research, and it's called The Last Meheecans, like instead of Mohegans, The Last Meheecans.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Phil. What about a special episode to you?
One that just like speaks to my the geek in me is the World of Warcraft one, of course. That one is always a treasure. But now that we're talking about it more, it was, rather than episode, it was the movie that spoke to me the most. Like I said, I don't know if we discussed this off recording, but my dad and I would watch it together a lot because he loved the commentary. He loved the way Canadians are represented in the movie and of course in the show. But "Shut Your Fucking Face, Uncle Fucker," that song is a classic. Even him and I would sing it. But but of course, like the deeper meanings in it, of course, like how in terms of like parent groups trying to control curse words to the point where they had Cartman chipped, and anytime he cursed, he got zapped. But then in the end, it all comes full circle when his chip gets malfunctioned, and his ability to curse turns the chip into electrical energy in order to fight Satan. Wow, what the heck? That movie like allowed me, gave me the freedom to just curse if my emotions wanted to. Yeah, we're good here, bro. All right, man. Thank you.
And I had a question for y'all.
Yeah.
And see your thoughts. Because we talk about like nearing towards cancel culture. South Park has always been the envelope of pushing and being a controversial thing where I think it gets to the point where we know it exists and we let them say anything or do anything. But do you think South Park, is there anything untouched that they're unable to talk about, make a joke about, that would scream cancel culture to stop them? Because throughout the beginning, ever since they've started, parents have petitioned for them. And then one of the things I can look at is like a few episodes, like the controversy of they were going to reveal how Muhammad would look like. And that was like a whole nation of people were furious on that. And that was going into like a religious sense. And then also what I could think of is the Wheel of Fortune episode where it was people that annoy you. And they had this subgroup of people of the dad went completely off and picked the wrong word. Yeah, and was just labeled a racist for the rest of his life.
Oh yeah.
I know exactly the episode you're talking about because the right word was naggers.
People who annoy you.
People who annoy
you. See, but it was so funny because they had like Michael Richards from Seinfeld at that time. Like there were a couple of high-profile cases of people who had said the N-word and were canceled, and that was relevant commentary at the time. And it's like, how intolerant of the intolerant are we? It's it's such an interesting question.
They even made a joke about that on one of the episodes where because they took like the very country redneck. And they were saying, like, we don't take kindly to people that don't take kindly to people.
Yeah. No, and it was so hilarious to see that from the other side.
Like, I think...
I love that South Park isn't afraid to say, like, to call out the groups that are, the groups who are claiming that they're in the right, that even if, it is a worthy cause, you're still fighting for the cause in really shitty ways, And... I think, like if there was a role for the South Park media franchise in itself for humanity, that it's the jester. It is the clown on the stage that is wants to point out all the shitty qualities of the king or royalty or and the weak and the poor as well too. Mm-hmm. I think another episode that popped up in my head was when when Stan's dad was fighting for
the
Columbus Day, and so he ended up even calling all the people in Columbus, Ohio, like, "Oh, why are you being a shitty person? Why would a person willingly choose a place called Columbus when he's violated all these rights?" And then like he gets a DNA test just to prove that he's part Native American, and the only reason why he gets that is because he makes out with a Native American just so he can get a DNA swab, and like he's fighting. I mean, I get the cause for it, but like the things he does, so that way society doesn't see him as a hypocrite, or as so that they can see him as someone who is righteously fighting against Columbus Day. But
see, if I remember that episode correctly, that's the one where they had the 21andMe commercials too, right?
Yeah, you should. 100% victim.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I don't know if you guys remember the Soho Karen incident.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so it was like, what was it? A lady dropped her phone, and like a black kid, he had the same exact phone, and she tries to like tackle the kid, legit kid, like teenager, and claims that he stole her phone. And like after it turns out that she had just misplaced her phone in the Uber, people were trying to label her racist for having press and identifying him as like a thief, that it wasn't his phone, so on and so forth. But when she was trying to defend herself, she was just like, I can't be racist. I'm actually like 10% Puerto Rican or something like that. And I thought it was so interesting because South Park pretty much called that exact moment. And because I think it happened in a pretense, like I think that happened prior. But it was interesting to kind of see that, because in the 21andMe episode, in the commercial that they had, I do remember the part where there was a white guy and he was just like, oh, I had all these issues. I just kept getting in trouble at work while saying the N-word. And then it was like 2% African. And he was like, oh, and I can say it all day. And I was just like, I've met individuals who have that kind of like mentality. It's crazy. Like I was telling Elliott last season, there's a UFC fighter. His name is Mike Perry. And pretty much same situation. Super white guy, has like a small percentage of African in him. And now he's just going around using the N-word just freelessly. And I'm just like, it's interesting. But yeah, South Park's definitely brought it to light. And the Columbus episode was hilarious because I do remember Randy had all the attire with all the photos of pictures and everything, where he was like, everyone was stoked on Columbus.
Yeah.
Oh, and the native who had made out with the Randy, like he ends up falling in love with him in the end.
Yeah.
He's like, I never felt this way before.
Yeah. It's like I've never felt so alive. It's kind of sad.
It felt so. I was like, oh my God. That's another like because they didn't have to run it that far, but they do every time. They take it to the absolute stretch, and like
100%.
It's honestly really satisfying to watch when they can do that really well, and they have a lot of episodes that do that too, for sure.
Yeah. So I learned about their writing style, and they've been like perfecting this over the seasons. But they were basically saying that when you have a scene and then it's like a beat or a skit, and then it's supposed to go like and then, if you can put an and then in between the scenes, they're like, it's boring. Don't do it. They try to replace every and then with either but or and therefore. And when I have that in my mind while I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, this but, and then oh, this and therefore. it's even funnier. Yeah, like Randy, he wants to do a test, but he wants it to get it back a Native American. And therefore he makes out with a native, and therefore the native falls in love with the Native American. It's just like it's so silly but they figured something out.
And speaking about just the creating process, I watched a documentary of like how they did episodes back then, of just the frame by frame shots and how tedious and how long it would take to film an episode. and even with technology. And now with all the technology, I feel like it takes them less than a few days to put everything together. So I know they call it like the war room, where they film an episode within 7 days, and they can produce it so quickly that they can jump out. If something happened last week on the news, they can have an episode within that week displaying or talking about that episode, which is a crazy way to have, like, to keep up with current culture and make a statement on it.
Oh yeah. Well, I think also it's like they were able to, absolutely, what's the word I'm looking for? Like perfect their brand and like their actual style of animation. Because when you look at it compared to modern technology, like their animation hasn't changed too much. Like it's advanced, like it's much clearer. But I think they chose like a very simplistic approach that allows them to kind of further the simplicity that technology is now giving them. Because mind you, a lot of the characters, they still hop like when they walk around and stuff. Like they don't actually use their legs. They just like pop, 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 pop. And it's like Phil mentioned earlier with the Canadians, is like they still just use the flapping heads. Like all they have to do is just be on beat with the syllables. But I think since they chose that early on, when it was more of a requirement for them, I think they actually get to reap the benefits of being like the first movers to really perfect that style and really bring it to like a mainstream. Because when you look at the old South Park, when tech wasn't that good, you can see like the little paper cutouts they'll have, and they actually have like the little shadows underneath. So now the only difference is the shadows are gone, but the little paper cutouts are now digitized. But the same movements, instead of them manually dragging it, they just said like, oh, let's manually do it with a mouse now. But it works.
Yeah, I didn't like that animation style at first, but then it grows on you and you see how funny it can be.
Oh yeah, and it's unique though, because all the other, like even now with all the adult animes and animations, it's like you see they still have the more fluid approach to them. Like they want to make it as humanistic and realistic as possible. But South Park, they're just like, nah, we don't have to do all that. Let's just keep what we're doing. Have everyone jumping side to side as they walk.
True.
Like Elliott, what were some of the episodes that stood out to you?
Gosh, there's really a lot. Like I would say, more than a dozen that stand out, but just something that I thought was funny and relevant. And like one of the cases where they actually changed. So they had an episode with Al Gore going way back, and it was about Manbearpig. And it was like the imaginary threat. And it was like half man, half bear, half pig. And it was just so silly, like 150%. But that episode, there's like no Manbearpig. But that was supposed to be a stand-in for climate change. And they later, like seasons and seasons later, when they changed their mind about climate change, they brought Al Gore back. And that episode was just hilarious. I just remember that scene. Manbearpig, he rips into a restaurant and he's like killing people, and there's a guy he has his wine and he's like, Sharon, what are we going to do about climate change that nobody else can do? Like, and there's still China. And then Manbearpig like eats them. Oh gosh. I just think that was really funny, and the way that they portrayed it, I think it was great.
I think that was also one of the few times where they were openly apologetic and admitting to them being wrong too.
Exactly.
Because even the characters themselves, because they went through the motions of apologizing to Al Gore, and Al Gore was like, "No, come back when you're cereal," and he was like, "You're not cereal." And the entire time it's like, I love how they brought it back, because like you said, decades, like years and years have went by. But it still shows like the relevancy of how they're adapting with the show as well. Like as the creators, they're bringing that evolution of them into the show and making it more modern as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest modern things I can remember that they actually made a statement, it went against was China, with all these Chinese bands. When we go to like video games and even entertainment, like the NBA, where we know the country, how much they censor things. And as American companies, should we either represent our values, or should, because of money, give them a product and help censor to kind of appease them? And they had a whole episode with Disneyland / having the Chinese president be Winnie the Pooh. And one of the things that they said as an apology from Matt Stone and Trey Parker was, like the NBA, we welcome Chinese censors into our homes and into our hearts. We too love money more than freedom and democracy. Which also has liability of, you think of a comedy thing where they probably had consumption of that, and being completely banned of an entire country that has a huge population could be detrimental. And we see other companies, even the NBA, where the decisions that they would make, they'd be like, we criticized the NBA for allowing them being censored in the way, like how we kind of bent over for them, that market.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The NBA even they made a statement and then against what China's practices at first, and then once they felt the hurt of getting less money from China, oh, we're just kidding, we NBA loves China, it's just, and of course, society notices that stuff, but I'm glad that South Park is there to on its cartoon megaphone, shout it out. So that way it can't be oblivious to people at the very least,
Yeah.
But yeah, Benito getting choked out was hilarious.
Oh yeah, because then he used the wire. He stuck it behind him on Hitman.
Yeah.
And poor Piglet. Piglet was traumatized. Okay. Well, one thing I wanted to. What was that?
The South Park games.
I've seen highlights from, but I never played one fully through.
I haven't played the RPG either, so I can't really make comments. But I've only played the N64 first-person shooter South Park, where it was very, very crude. But for example, one of their guns was taking a snowball. You could throw a snowball, but it's South Park and it snows, or you could pee on your snowball and throw it in. And then of course they had aliens involved. What was that piece of poop?
Mr. Hanky.
That represented Christmas.
Yeah, Mr. Hanky. Christmas poo. Yeah.
I had a shirt with him too. That was a great shirt. So probably one of my favorite South Park shirts. Yeah, there's just so many. There's really so many media outlets they go through. Besides games, I know a lot of their episodes. There's even just within the context of the show itself, there was a lot of moments that didn't really have to do with political correctness or anything, but in the end, kind of fed itself. Like when Chef, that voice actor for Chef, left the show because he didn't want to do the episode where they made fun of Scientology, and then that whole implication of how the actors actually felt about the show besides the creators. It's had a very interesting mind or body of itself throughout humanity.
Oh yeah. And like you mentioned earlier too, there's never any boundaries with South Park. Because one thing I wanted to mention in terms of how it's relevant to today's society, I think the fact that we've all kind of come to the conclusion they can't be canceled, right? It's been decades strong. They've talked about the most controversial topics and they have yet to be canceled. And I wonder if South Park's existence is still symbolic to kind of saying that we're beyond cancel culture, as a society as a whole. Because it allows us to kind of reflect, kind of see the growth and adjust from there. Because how Elliott mentioned the Manbearpig is they evolved, they apologized openly, and they were we were wrong, and here's how we changed our views on it. But then every other topic, they would allow us to point fun at ourselves from both sides, because they do take that more neutral, more nihilistic approach to kind of say, you believe this, we're going to make fun of it. You believe that, we make fun of that as well. Either way, we're making fun of everybody. And I'm curious, and I want to know all your thoughts on that too. is that how society should kind of embrace cancel culture, is kind of moving beyond it and just, you know, embracing the fact that people make mistakes and we can grow from them?
Yeah, it's a thin line, and I'm sure Elliott can kind of gather my thoughts. With the way I view it is there needs to be some sort of accountability of if you're living a racial life or just bigotry, and I think that needs to be condemned in some sort of way. But to the point where, like I said, it's getting to the point where it's tough, where it becomes a he said, she said, and just the phrase of it can completely just wipe people out before getting, is it actually necessarily true? What does the investigation of that look like? And it can be tough, especially when it comes to the Me Too movement. It's a great movement, but with it, just the allegation alone, people just want to back off so far away from it, where it's like people losing jobs, people going through that route just because they don't want to be associated. And it kind of makes me think of the PC principle, where is over censorship and being overly PC the approach to go with things, or do we need to kind of step back and self-regulate? And who is that self-regulator?
That's a good point. And something they both say, Matt or the two guys, they're two very
Matt Stone and Trey Parker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They say themselves that they're extremely privileged, like rich white guys. So a lot of the things that is about PC culture, they can say and get away with. But that's also kind of why I think people want to watch it. It's because like they can say all that stuff, and they do. But it's still important commentary.
Would you say like it's good that they can live in that kind of free space?
They should use their powers for good, yeah, and speak truth to power with humor. That's super important. But it's kind of like that. I think they also ask the question too, right? When does PC culture go too far? Where should those boundaries be? When do we get too ridiculous?
That's fair. Yeah, that is very fair.
Too. And I guess what South Park, I feel like what it's also trying to say beyond cancel culture is, like when any ideal gets taken to its extreme by the people that are trying to carry out that idealism, usually becomes the asshole that starts, ruining people's lives around them. Whether it's someone who wants to control or call out people for their mistakes to the point where they want to ruin their lives, rather than try to have them. And their form of justice is to ruin their lives, rather than seek justice by having like, hey, can you see if you change your mind about what you think? If I offer you a good counter argument, or an extreme of trying to get Columbus Day canceled by pretending that you have Native American blood when you don't, or any side can go into that, cross that line, and then started tipping the scales towards chaos, which I think honestly is a good. South Park is a good counterbalance, at least in thoughts, towards what is going on in today's world. And I think all the shitty fallout towards and the people that are getting hurt is the emergence of those who have power, tipping the scale too far in one direction, whether they realize it or not. And not just political sides, but just human behavior too. Especially like when you see characters who really, like, again, once Randy, his emotions to not face shame causes him to lie and do be deceitful and to the most extremes. And I think it's exactly what human beings do. I would even say to the extent that Randy would ever do it. Although it's hilarious in the cartoon, but I could see people doing that just for the sake of saving face or prove their point.
I think we see it all the time on social media now too.
Yeah.
Like we always want to paint that one light of people, and then kind of hide all the, we want to post all the highlights, and then leave everything that's negative on the back end where people can't see it, but then pose like everything's perfect. So that's a very good point, actually.
Yeah. Well, we can't do that anymore because social media.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's a double-edged sword. It depends. I think it depends on who contains the information. Like who's the one that retains control of it. Because I think if the individual themselves retain it, then they have that opportunity to present the highlight. But then if it does get into the hands of others, or it does affect others, that's when they can bring the realistic side, the skeletons in the closet, out to light and let everyone know the full story. So, because like you were saying, like Randy,
or fabricate skeletons in the closet for someone.
That is true.
With deep fakes. Simply just changing the wording on a digital document and changing the words out, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, like if I can relate it to South Park, we'd be in the closet with Tom Cruise, John Travolta, and R. Kelly. On the Scientology episode. Hilarious. Well, I feel like our conversation right now does kind of tie into like what integrity represents. So I'm not gonna double down on that and make that like a side topic. But one thing I want to ask you all is which South Park character kind of relates to you the most, and what's the reasoning why?
Who?
I said choose a character that you feel represents you in like the real world, and what's the reason behind it?
You know what's kind of funny is I felt like Butters. I always kind of related to Butters, just like how nice he is, and then like what his imagination is in the background, and I don't know why. It's just he's really silly, but I feel like I understand his character.
Okay, I'll jump in on that too because I also picked Butters. So it was between Butters and Randy for me. Those were the two. Like I'm a Butters Randy hybrid, which sounds hilarious. But I will say, because I took notes when I was thinking, I was like, how do I relate to Butters? And do I have specific episodes, hilarious references, and like if I read them off the screen right now, it was So you can tell me if this kind of relates to you as well, Elliott, or if you can see how Butters embodies these traits, right? The first one I put is an entrepreneurial spirit by when he becomes a pimp. Now he's willing to use the resources around him.
Oh yeah.
He has a sense of innocence and cluelessness. So, for example, when he was investigating his dad's whereabouts for his mom, and his dad was having homosexual acts in the all-male bathhouse, and he reported it as playful wrestling to his mom, playful naked wrestling. And he was like, I don't know, all those fellows are just on dad. I don't think he won. So he's just so innocent. And then the last one that I put was having the worst outcomes happen from the best of intentions. And the example I pulled was the You Got Served based episode, You Got F'd in the A, where he was like the tap dancing champion. He didn't want to dance or anything because he accidentally killed all those people. But then he wanted South Park to win the dance battle. So he comes out of retirement and accidentally kills the opposing dance crew again. And I was like, I feel like at a much smaller scale that has happened to me before, without the tap dancing or the killings, of course. So what do you think, Elliott? Do any of those kind of relate to you too?
No, yeah, that stands out. But it's just the innocence and like seeing things in that particular kind way. And yeah, best of intentions, but something happens.
And therefore it goes wrong. All right. Michael, Phil, what about you?
I've been thinking about it, and it's just been kind of tough. just like navigating around. And I think like the biggest one I think I would relate to would be, I think it'd be two parts. Like the first one would be, I think it'd be
dramatic
like
pause.
Yeah, I think it'd be like a Randy Marsh, the dad, where it's just like he kind of changes in waves, but with that character, he kind of understands his own being of life, but then can get just sidetracked. And with Randy Marsh, he does have personal beliefs of what he's doing is right, but the community around him may see differently. And I think it's just hard navigating of like, this is the path I've learned and what I'm trying to go through. And sometimes I'm wrong, but deep down, it's just like, it's hard just adulting and kind of navigating and just that transformation. And I think the other one would be Kenny, in the essence of just growing up in a different compared to my peers, but just kind of being along where I've had friends who had a lot more money, especially in college, where just like I felt like a fish out of water. And sometimes socioeconomic statuses would be challenged by the peers around me, and even in a joking way. But deep down, like it didn't affect friendships and can still kind of hang out. And it was tough when sometimes friends or family would be like, yo, like, here's this thing that you might need. And then also be like on the butt end of jokes.
In a playful way, right? Or a hurtful way?
It goes either way.
Okay, that's fair. I like that explanation of Kenny too, because like knowing you, I thought it was gonna be like a much more jokey approach, but I think you did add like some extra like depth to like Kenny as a character.
And with that, like I've always like had issues with like speech, and like I know I murmur and have like a low voice, so I know like sometimes like just having a conversation, sometimes be like, I don't know what you said, like try again.
Yeah, dude, I like that. See, if I had to interpret the combination of two, of like Kenny and Randy, I would say that would make you Mysterion, who's Kenny's superhero alter ego, who has the ability to never truly die. And the reason why I say that is because if you look at Randy's constant evolution and changing, as you mentioned, and then Kenny's ability to always regenerate and recreate himself, I feel like that's a good explanation of evolution and metamorphosis and how we grow on the day by day. Like if you look at it as, if we look at every day as its own unique day, and then the day prior is our old selves dying and our new selves being reborn, I think that's kind of ends up being the summation of Kenny and Randy. Or maybe I'm looking too deep into it. What about you, Phil?
I see parts of characters that are relatable, not the entire character itself, because I even think Stan and Kyle, who are to me the most normal, have their deep ends, right? But Randy is also someone who parts of him I see reflected in me, especially when he really gets into something, he dives in deep. Like it's almost like every week he has a new project that he wants to get into, and then it finally culminates into him actually following through with Integrity Farms, which is really good to see. You know, as much of the antics he gets in with that industry, I think people can agree that watch the show, like, oh, it's good to see Randy is like sticking to this one thing for a whole season beyond, you know. So I like that. I like seeing that in Randy. I love Kyle and the way he sticks up. Stan too, but I love how Kyle in the crazy world he lives in, he finds a way to stick up for what's right all the time, or as best as he can. Even if maybe like there are sometimes he's willing to kill, especially. I always feel like Kyle's main arch nemesis is Cartman in most episodes, and I love seeing that. And then they're still friends, and even Cartman, like part of his persona, like his actions kind of represent what some of my thoughts, how my thoughts react to the world. I just don't act upon them. I don't take people and put them in stew and feed them to other people like he did once. Yeah, those are my characters there.
I like that. Yeah, I'm definitely glad you're not making people into stew. The Scott Tinnerman stew.
What do you do? Like tears? There's tears in my chili or something like that.
He's like, the tears are so delicious.
And all the
classic. Oh, dude, that was a classic episode too.
Yeah.
No, well, guys, I think I think that's all that I had on my end. Was there any other topics y'all wanted to discuss?
South Park? No, and nothing top of my head. South Park. I'm glad we're reflecting on it, because in a way it's been a part of this world, at least a part of my world, as much as like an iconic building like the Stratosphere for Las Vegas has been. It's always looming. People know about it. I'm not always looking at it, but when I do, I'm like, damn, it's a nice tower.
That is fair.
Yeah.
When you put it like that, it's the one thing that continuously followed me into adulthood. Like the next biggest thing I would say, maybe for others, not for me personally, would be Pokemon. But like outside of those two series, it's like, and Dragon Ball Z. Sorry, I almost forgot about Dragon Ball Z. Oh, horrible. But it's like South Park's the one that was continuous, no breaks in between, just nonstop go action for me. So I think Trey and Matt's product and like the growth that they've had even recently, like they signed a $900 million contract. And I think it shows the significance and love that we all have for South Park. And one little side note, I found this out last night too. They might make Tegrity an actual like weed and dispensary, possibly.
If they don't,
so there might be an actual Tegrity Farms.
I also read that they are trying to buy the Casa Bonita
Wait,
restaurant.
really? The one that's actually in Colorado? Dude, that is, if they do that, I think that would be perfect. Like that would be perfect to bring everything full circle.
Bring what is like satire to like a physical real life environment and still be a parody of something.
Yeah. You all saw when they had the entire town, like all the characters attend a actual Denver Broncos game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I love that aspect. Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, I think, yeah. Elliott, was there anything else on your end?
No, I think that was everything.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're done here. I guess even though they might not see it, I'm going to give a shout out to Trey and Matt. Let them know that thanks to their product, their genius, that's what led to this conversation today, as well as many other conversations held around South Park. And yeah, the influence that South Park has had on us has lasted decades. Now it's going into like new generations. So yeah, keep at it, and we're looking forward to seeing what else y'all produce. So let's go back down to South Park, have ourselves a time. All right, y'all. I guess we're done for the day. So peace. Yeah,
thank you too. You did a great job, and I can't wait to see more, listen to more of your episodes, your podcasts, and hope to be part of the conversation again.
Oh yeah, dude, absolutely. Sure. I'm looking forward to this too. All right, so to our viewers and our listeners, what are your thoughts on South Park in modern day society? Make sure to leave your comments below, subscribe to our channel for more content, and be sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And as always, much love and peace.
Just got off the clock, just got on my chill. Called up my homie Brent to see what be the deal. What you trying to do? I'm just trying to heal. Hella floated, never bloated's what I'm trying to feel. Hop in the whip and